everyone and welcome back to my Pentagon Challenge series where we have to start unemployed and we have to win the 5 Champions League equivalents across the 5 playable continents in Football Manager. We already have ticked off 2 of those. We have ticked off Africa, winning the CAF Champions League with Supersport United. We then moved to Japan to Kashima Antlers where we won the J-League and we went on to win the AFC Champions League. And where we left last episode is we have 2 clubs vying for our services. We have Cruzeiro over in Brazil and we also have Club Necaxa in Mexico. Both interesting challenges at this point, but I felt at this stage of my career there was one obvious opportunity that I needed to go and do. I felt it was the right time for me to tackle the CONCACAF Champions League and create a new superpower in Mexico, so we became the new manager at Club Necaxa. Whilst they're not one of the most notable clubs in Mexico, I was pleasantly surprised with the amount of talent in their playing squad. Our key players are on the wings for this team, and they have former Lazio man Luca Romero on the right, and Brazilian Riquelme Felipe, who looks like an outstanding talent in game, but he is currently wanted by Liverpool right now. And then the jewel in our new Mexican crown is central midfielder new-gen Norman de Jesus, who I will be looking forward to driving this team on. With the tactic in place, you can see where this team's weakness is, and that is defensively, but we have an amazing amount of firepower right now. The club have already started their Liga MX Apertura campaign and currently sit 10th in the table with 4 points. And for those of you who aren't aware of what happens in Mexico, basically the league is split into 2 different parts, an opening phase and a closing phase, and the winners of both get themselves into that CONCACAF Champions League, which is where I want to be this season. Well, I say this season, I want to be in those top spots to be in the competition for next year. And obviously we have 2 bites at the cherry of doing this, so anything can happen. It is football at the end of the day. Our first game in charge was away to Deportivo Guadalajara, and Felipe really showed us what we'd be missing if anyone were to come in for him, as he bagged a goal in each half and provided an assist in a 4-0 demolition job. That result was followed up by 2 defeats in 3 matches, but we slowly did see the team begin to transition and understand our tactic and exactly what was expected from them. So much so that we finished the season with 3 successive wins to finish the Apertura in 8th and qualifying for the knockout portion of the competition. And at this stage, this is where it goes into a knockout competition where predominantly ties are settled over 2 legs, both home and away. But there is some very interesting rules in Mexico where the higher team has a priority seeding. So if you finish first in the league, you could draw a tie and go through because you finished higher. There's no extra time, there's no penalties. You just go straight on through. So being in 8th in the table is not a good position to be in. Due to our lowly position, we even had to qualify through a preliminary round where we took on FC Jerez. This one was pretty one-sided as we rattled home 3 unanswered goals to advance into the quarter-final stage. And this is where we have those 2-leg ties, so we will take on Club Leon in the first one. And despite going a goal down within the first 60 seconds, the squad rallied round to score 4 first-half goals of our own, with left-back Aldo Cruz pulling the strings. We scored a 5th goal in the second half through Andres Colorado to take a nice 4-goal lead into the away game. The game on the road was a lot more balanced, with Club Leon taking the lead twice on the day, but we equalised twice ourselves to win the tie 7-3 on aggregate and move into the semi-finals. Here we had to face Xolos Tijuana, who finished top of the table, so as the lower ranked side, we were at home again for the first leg. But much like the quarter-final, the team on the road really seemed to struggle, so we took full advantage to score 3 goals without reply and take a nice lead into that second leg. And here we held firm to achieve a 0-0 draw on the day to make a surprising move into the Apertura final where we'd face Club America. As you'd expect for any final, this was a tight game with us scoring the only goal through Riquelme Felipe on the stroke of half-time. In the away leg at the Azteca, we extended our lead through Marcelo Flores, but Club America scored twice in 3 second-half minutes to make the game all square. So with the tie in the balance, up steps our best player Felipe, who cut inside the area from the left-hand side before firing the ball across the goal and into the side of the net to see us win the tie 3-2 on aggregate and see us crowned Apertura winners. Now, this is massive for us because not only does this help me on a reputation level from a personal standpoint, the club also increases in reputation because of it, and we will be in the CONCACAF Champions League next season. The league in Mexico is split into an opening and closing stage with a transfer window in between. And with this new reputation boost and Champions League qualification in the bag, I decided it was smart to cash in on our key assets and reinvest in young Mexican talent for next season. Over that winter period, we sold over £14 million worth of players, with Luca Romero being the key outgoing, departing the club for China for £9 million. We used that money to improve all over the pitch as we made 11 signings in January, including new goalkeeper Jose Alugio, new defenders Diego Ramirez at centre-back and Rodrigo Ferreira at left-back, and midfield reinforcements in Jesus Nieto and Victor Mendez. Those signings freshened up this team and also made it a little bit younger, also a little bit more Mexican as we moved into the closing stage of the Mexican League. And I saw this as a little bit of a free hit as we'd already qualified for the CONCACAF Champions League, but we absolutely blew the competition away here to top the table and move straight into the quarterfinals of the knockouts. The quarters were pretty simple as we won the game on the road 3-1 before dominating back at home to secure a 2-0 win. But this is where things got a little bit tricky as we faced recently defeated Champions League finalist Deportivo Toluca, who have been shopping in Europe as they have Luke Thomas and Harvey Barnes playing for them. As we finished higher in the table this time, we were on the road first and got caught completely cold here as Toluca hammered us in this one, with Thiago Tomas scoring an impressive hat-trick to see us on the ropes for the second leg. But, as I mentioned earlier in the video, these Mexican teams really seem to show a little bit of stage fright when it comes to the away leg, which is really strange. Gustavo Coutinho pulled a goal back for us in the first half, but in the second half, Toluca collapsed under the pressure, conceding 3 goals in the final 20 minutes to see us win the tie 4-3 on aggregate. And as if it wasn't difficult enough for us in the closing stage final, we would have to take on CONCACAF Champions League winners CF Monterrey in this final. We suffered a narrow 1-0 loss on the road in the first leg, but given how these teams play on the road, I knew I'd be fine. Back home, we were in control of the game with Coutinho, De Jesus and Venegas getting on the score sheet to see us lift the closing stage trophy, which made it pretty conclusive that we are the best team in Mexico right now. And that bodes well for us as a Mexican team has won the CONCACAF Champions League in the last 6 seasons. And we did all of this while selling our best player Riquelme Philippi back to Brazilian side Flamengo in March. The finances aren't great at Club Necaxa, so we might have to sell some more players if we want to invest over the summer. And over the summer, we did make some moves as fullback Jose Castillo left the club for the UAE for £4.2 million, and we also sold Marcelo Flores to Pachuca for £2.3 million. Oh, and last season's top goal scorer Gustavo Coutinho is on his way back to Brazil for another £3.5 million. But that did mean we were able to reinvest in this squad, where I went heavy on new gen talent using my Wonder Kid Finder. And if you haven't used this, I will leave a link to it in the video description, but it is positively the best way to go about finding new gens in your save. My guys who watch on stream love this filter and they're using it in your saves, and I would highly recommend that you start using it in yours as well, because it allows you to find some absolute gems. First up was fullback Jose Miguel Yamin for £3 million, and he was followed in by centre-back Rafael Manzotti for £4.4 million. They were followed in by wingers Faisal Al-Dosari and Julian Polanco, both on free transfers, and English striker William Williams, yes, that is his name, from Fulham for £1.2 million. So the team has a bit of a new look to it, with 8 of the players in the best 11 now being new gens. It's getting to that part of the time in the save because we are moving into 2030 at this point. Much like last season, we have both the opening and closing stages in Mexico, but we have also added the Leagues Cup and the CONCACAF Champions League to the schedule this season. But the Champions League doesn't start for us until March, so let's get into that opening stage. We started the season pretty well with a draw on the opening day and followed that up with back-to-back wins, but the season then went on a pause as we were participating in the Leagues Cup. This is a competition where they take some of the teams from Mexico, some of the teams from the US, and some of the teams from Canada and throw them together in a little tournament geographically located, which is pretty interesting, but ultimately not a big part of this challenge for us, so I kind of saw it as a little bit of a warm-up to the CONCACAF Champions League that's coming later on in the year. We entered at the quarter-final stage where we took on San Jose Earthquakes from the MLS's Western Conference. And this was quite possibly the biggest mismatch I've seen since we arrived in Mexico, as we rained down goals on this American side, ultimately winning 7-0 to move into the South semi-finals. The semi saw a clash of Mexican titans as we would have to take on Tigres away from home. We took the lead in the second half through Joshua Mancha, but that goal was quickly cancelled out by Rocco Simic. And that's how the game stayed, taking it straight to penalties, where our keeper came up clutch, saving 2 spot kicks to see us advance into that South final. It was American opposition again, as this time we take on Chicago Fire in what was a tight game, but we came out on top again with William Williams scoring the only goal of the game on the stroke of half time. And the eagle-eared of you would have heard me say that we were part of the South final, where the winners of every single final, geographically north, south, east and west, go into a little tournament, and then it's a little bit of a playoff where you are drawn against one of the other teams. This whole North American thing is hella confusing, but at least I avoided the MLS. We were back to facing Mexican opposition as we had to take on Deportivo Guadalajara, but we hammered them in this one, having 36 shots in total, but ultimately only winning the game 2-0. So we made it to another final where we would have to take on CF Pachuca. But this was a lot more even, with Union Polanco getting the only goal of the game in the 84th minute to see us lift the 3rd trophy of our reign in Mexico. And whilst this ultimately doesn't matter to our achievements in this save, we do see this as a little bit of a warm-up for what's to come later on in the season, which is good. But in the meantime, we went back to the Apertura, where we struggled a little bit after our League's Cup success, but righted things towards the end of the competition as it went into the knockout stages to finish top of the league. Just like last season, we had to take on Club Leon in the quarterfinals, and this season we lost the game away from home 2-1, but I felt confident that we could progress with the second leg being at home. Polanco opened the scoring in the second leg, but his goal was quickly cancelled out by Rodrigo Villa just 9 minutes later. Faisal Al-Dasari then scored in the 67th minute to make it 3-3 on aggregate, and that's how the game stayed. Now, as I mentioned, this is where Mexico is crazy. Because we finished top of the table, we just go through. No extra time, no penalties, no chance for the other team to get any more goals. That's it. We just move on, which is good for me. I'm happy with it. The semi-finals were much more routine here as we brushed Tijuana aside, winning both legs 2-0 to set up a final with CF Pachuca in a replay of our League's Cup final. This one was over 2 legs, however, and we were on the road first, and even surprised me as we beat them 3-0 on the night to effectively retain the Apertura there and then. The returning leg was a bit of a goal fest, ending in a 3-3 draw, but we retained the Apertura for a second season. Which is good, because if things go tits up in the CONCACAF Champions League this year, that means we're in the competition again next time. Over the winter break, I dipped my toe into the transfer market as I signed Juan Felipe Arango from América de Cali in Colombia for £2.5 million, just to give us a little bit more firepower. We then started the closing stage well again in dominating fashion, but as soon as the Champions League kicked in, I used the league as a rotation option to make sure that we were fresh for our #1 priority. As we moved into March, the CONCACAF Champions League draw was done, and we had to face Minnesota from the MLS in the second round. We travelled to the States for the first leg and came back with a 2-1 lead thanks to a brace from Captain Fantastic Norman De Jesus. In Mexico, we stamped our authority on the Tide to score 3 first-half goals to coast to a 5-1 aggregate win and progress to the quarter-finals. It was an all-Mexico tie here as we'd have to face Tigres, a club that we've kind of struggled to beat previously. Well, that definitely wasn't the case here, as in the first leg we demolished them with skipper Norman De Jesus leading the way in a 5-0 win on the road in the first leg. The second leg was a little bit more closer in scoreline, but we still came out on top, winning 2-1 on the night with goals from Arango and Mancha. So it was Mexican opposition again in the semi-finals as we'd have to face Club America, and this time we'd be at home in the first leg. Much like in these other games, we raced out into a 3-goal lead going into half-time, with Saudi international Al-Dasari scoring twice. But in the second half, Club America battled back, scoring 2 goals in 3 minutes to give me something to think about going into the second leg. This one was played at the Azteca, and the two sides could only be separated on the day with a strike from Jose Nieto from the edge of the area. And that result meant that we made it to the CONCACAF Champions League final at the first time of asking, where we'd have to take on Atlanta United from the MLS. We went out and dominated this one from the off, but we couldn't find a breakthrough until the second half as Julian Polanco whipped an outstanding free kick into the back of the net. That goal meant that Atlanta had to attack, and we were able to counter-attack them and were awarded a penalty in the 87th minute, which William Williams was on hand to smash home. And that meant that we confirmed it, and Section 3 of this challenge was complete. Meaning we only have South America and Europe remaining, and I kind of want to leave Europe till the end, so I guess we have to go looking for jobs in either Argentina or Brazil. Whilst we were applying for jobs, we remained at Necaxa and even won the closing stage of the Liga MX for a second season in a row, meaning that we played 6 finals in our time in Mexico, winning them all. We're now over halfway through this challenge, and this is what our manager looks like right now. We have a 5-star reputation, a 77% win ratio through 429 games, and we've won 19 trophies in 9 seasons. But our time in Mexico has come to an end, so I hit resign and started looking for my next role. So now we have to get looking again for another job. We have options. We have to go to Brazil or Argentina. Personally, I would probably rather go to Brazil, but both nations have lots of fixtures for us to get into, so we need to find our next role. They're actually in the middle of their seasons right now, so hopefully we can pick something up in the not too distant future, but right now we're going to have to wait for a role to appear. Hopefully you've been enjoying this series so far, and if you have been, smash that like button, because we will continue to set the 500 like target for a video to be released tomorrow so that you can complete the journey and you can find out where we go in South America. And hopefully you have enjoyed it. If you want to see the playlist of all the videos or you've missed something, check out this playlist popping up here. It's going to be the playlist for this entire series.